Welcome into the spring concluding edition of Overtime Live here at Irish Illustrated, joined by the illustrious Tim Priester and Drew Mintock. I'm John Bryce of Football Scoop and IrishIllustrated.com. Guys, we're putting a bow on Notre Dame's spring game. I think we've all already said a spring game a bit more compelling, a bit more exciting than any of us expected. The blue team, that's the offense, winning the contest, I think 76-31. Tim, we'll kick it straight to you. Just your general overview of today's blue and gold game, which, by the way, had an attendance of 40,621, the most since a guy named Jimmy Clausen was at the quarterback position for the Fighting Irish.
Well, I went into this game, and we talked about on the pregame instant analysis about, just it's probably going to be really difficult for the offense, and it wasn't. I mean, it was way more than I expected, and largely because Emil Wagner was at right tackle, Billy Schrouth was at left guard, Lindsey Knapp was at left tackle, Charles Jagusa, of course, was there as well, and then Sullivan Absher at center, which we saw him dabble there, but to see an older guy placed amongst those other four, it's like, okay, well, this is a lot different. And then the offense went out and proved that. I thought the quarterbacks were all very productive in their own way. We'll get into that a little bit more, but I was blown away by the entertainment of a blue gold game, and I'm quite sure in 43 years I'd never said the words that I just said now about blown away about the entertainment value of a blue gold game.
Well, that's because Kenny Minchie imitated you and did a backflip. But let's not focus on that and get to Drew Mintock. Drew, I'm eager to hear your thoughts on today's blue and gold game.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't think I'm always that excited for the blue gold game, especially I think the practice viewings and stuff like that is usually what I'm more intrigued by. But this is definitely, as somebody who grew up in South Bend, probably one of the most exciting blue gold game experiences I've had just in terms of the action. I think, it's probably also aided by the three-man quarterback battle, but every snap felt like it mattered. Every snap, I feel like usually we get into the second half and it's kind of like, okay, there's a running clock. We're just trying to get through this without anybody getting hurt. And it didn't feel like that at all today. And we got to see a lot of the young talent from offense and defense really kind of making some plays. I mean, we saw Elijah Burris out there doing some stuff that we've been seeing this spring, and Luke Talich had an excellent day. I'm sure we'll get more into him, but I mean, he was just all over the field. He really showed off. There's a great picture taken by Tom
Willer's work.
Young Ansel Adams. So
yeah, best amazing photo out there. But yeah, just really overall a kind of enjoyable experience to cover that I think none of us came in today expecting.
And there's a picture right there of the dime that. Is that Bauman or Larson?
That's
I'm
Larson.
Not sure. Okay, it's Larson. I mean, both.
Because it was a little more. The Larson catch was a little more contested. The Bauman catch was just like he dropped it in an Easter basket.
Right, and that of course was CJ Carr on the delivering end of that. And I'm just writing. I'm trying to get to snap judgments done while we're doing all of this. When you see the ball is released, you look ahead to where the defender is in relation to the tight end, and you're thinking that ball's got to be perfect in order for that to be caught. And in both instances, it was absolutely perfect. CJ Carr, the ball comes out of his hand. It arrives at a receiver different from everybody else. That's not to take anything away from Kenny Minchie in particular, because I thought he was way better than his numbers indicated. And some of these numbers may be a little sketchy, admittedly, by Notre Dame as well. But, man, some really good stuff offensively. Credit to Gino Guidugli for the work that he's done with the young quarterbacks. And as we said on instant analysis, credit to Mike Denbrock for making an offense look way better than it did a week ago. And a lot of that had to do with the number one offensive line.
Great work by UTP, because you give me the perfect sublime segue to talk more in depth and more big picture about the quarterbacks. And I want to read this quote from Marcus Freeman today, because we knew he wasn't going to name a starter, but he gave us as much insight as he's given us in a really long time about the quarterback battle. It's a three-man battle right now: Steve Angeli, CJ Carr, Kenny Minchie. But Marcus Freeman saying today, and I quote, "You would like to be able to kind of go into fall camp with a two-quarterback battle. It's hard to have a three-quarterback battle. We've got to sit down and have some conversation, with what's best for our program and best for our quarterbacks. And so I'll open the floor to either of you and both of you to give me your thoughts on that and to kind of assess where we believe the quarterback situation is 80% of the way through Notre Dame's spring camp. I want to note again, they have 3 practices left. I believe those are Monday and Wednesday of next week. And then Wednesday, the 23rd of April, I believe, is Notre Dame's spring concluding practice.
Go for it, Drew.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense that Marcus Freeman said that from the standpoint that whoever wins the job, even if it is Steve Angeli, he has 1 start under his belt, and you're going to be going into Miami on August 31st with a very inexperienced quarterback, even if it's a senior in Angeli. So you want to be able to give whoever those are going to be as much reps as you can early on. And if you're going into early August, still splitting it 3 ways or then having to narrow it down to 2 guys at some point, like it kind of delays that process and takes away reps from guys who are really going to need it at that point in time. So I think that's prudent of Marcus Freeman to say, and that's certainly information he wouldn't volunteer if he didn't mean it.
I have been covering this football program for a long time, and I have a pretty good idea how fans react to certain moments during the season, and especially blue gold games. And I said this to Drew. With the way the 2 young quarterbacks play today, Minchie and Carr, I can see a lot of people saying, you know what? Just go with those 2. You know, Angeli's done a nice job when he's had opportunities, but it looks to me like they're ready to turn the youth loose, so to speak. Now, again, have they looked like that all spring? We don't know, but I bet that's a common reaction because CJ Carr, every time we see him throw the football, it's something special, and I'm thoroughly impressed with Kenny Minchie, both in the Jersey scrimmage. Remember, I said until he threw the interception in the Jersey scrimmage, I thought that he had the best day, and he was dynamic again today. So that's my impression, that I think the fan base is going to say, you know what, those 2 young quarterbacks, let's go with them. There has to be an odd man out. Marcus Freeman said it. Very honest thing for him to say, by the way, JB. And I'm glad that you quoted him directly. That's a really honest thing to say. And it made me think, okay, the way he's saying that, does he mean go with the 2 young guys? What's best for the program? I'm not sure. I don't know. But I have a feeling that that's kind of the general feeling among the fan base, that those 2 young guys are ready to be turned loose.
And look, let's be transparent here, just like Marcus Freeman was, and we are all very grateful for that kind of candor from Notre Dame's 4th-year head coach. And that is on a day that Tennessee has officially lost, or unofficially, whatever you want to say it, quarterback Nico Iamaleava, because he's looking for a $4 million deal. Steve Angeli already has turned down money to stay at Notre Dame. Steve Angeli, if he chooses to enter the transfer portal, and any of those 3 guys would, but Steve Angeli would be a high priority target for a lot of teams who will make a 7-figure salary in the NIL world if he decides to enter the transfer portal. So I think it's important to not bury our heads in the sand about what is the reality out there in the college football space right now. And we reported earlier today, Notre Dame has 0 interest in Nico. USC, I'm very confident in saying, has 0 interest in Nico. Hear a lot of talk about North Carolina, Texas Tech, and UCLA. So a Football Scoop will monitor that a little bit more than Irish Illustrated. But I just think it's important to be transparent there. There would be a market for any of these guys, but Steve Angeli, if he's the odd man out, would command money anywhere around the country, and he acquitted himself well today overall. He was not as sharp as what we've seen him early, in my opinion. He took a couple of quote-unquote sacks that we saw early on before things got going. And I thought it was important to note that the first touchdown of the day was led by CJ Carr, and he did it behind the second-team offensive line. And that second-team offensive line will not at all be a factor for Notre Dame in the fall, guys. So I do think that when you balance what CJ Carr did today overall, and you look at the fact that he led the day's first touchdown drive, a pass in the flat that Elijah Burris made a fantastic play to leap and extend and hit the pylon, that he did a lot of good things. And overall, in my opinion, I thought he had the best day today.
Can you imagine inserting Iamaleava in the Notre Dame equation with the culture and everything that they just accomplished in the previous season, and going into this year, and the good feelings, and coming out of the blue gold game looking at this saying, damn, they got a lot of talent on both sides of the ball. Can you imagine? I don't want to prejudge. I don't know the kid. Maybe he is worth more than 2.4 or whatever he's getting. I don't think that that's accurate. But putting a prima donna like that into an equation like Notre Dame, they just would not do that.
No, and again, we've talked about it. I don't know that we can give enough credit to Marcus Freeman for the culture that he has fostered and the job that he did all last fall in promoting team glory. And I know we're talking about today's spring game, but I really want to drive this point home. Like the team glory concept on a day that a guy is set to make $2.4 million in the coming year for his current team. And it is, I trust my sources in Knoxville that have said he's been looking for a $4 million deal. And he talked to an ACC team back in December, right after the Vols made the playoffs, or his people did. And he talked to a Big Ten team in December, right after the Vols made the playoffs, or his team did. And so Marcus Freeman just deserves tremendous credit for that, and all three quarterbacks deserve tremendous credit for that. But Drew, I would like for you to expound a little bit on your thoughts overall on the quarterback battle today, because as much as we want to talk about some individual performances and the overall much greater talent, 1 through 85 or 1 through 105 or 120 that we saw at Notre Dame today, obviously quarterback is front and center.
Yeah, definitely. And I just to add on that too, I think that's, from Freeman's perspective, like if you think Angeli's being beat out, it would be in your best interest as Notre Dame to keep him around. But that's not the culture he's set. He said, I'm going to be honest and give you feedback. So if that's how he feels and that's how he says it, like I think that only supports the culture you want at Notre Dame, where they're going to be direct with you. I thought, I wrote a story quickly after the game. I said Carr outshined the competition. I think other than that interception, he did the best. I also think, we continue to see Minchie can do a lot with his legs. He gets away from people. You can do it scrambling or in design runs. And I think even though I think he completed like 43% of his passes technically, I think a lot of his misses, especially the ones downfield, like they were still pretty good throws. He was pushing the ball 35 yards down the field into double coverage and still kind of put it in places where it wasn't going to get picked off, or he was just overthrowing the guy. So I think even in the misses, you saw where he's developing and just kind of the overall arm talent he has too. I think, Angeli, he did most of his work late in the game with third team versus third team stuff. I think he completed his last 7 passes for 93 yards, but when he was kind of with those first and second units and going against the better defenses, he kind of struggled, and he only had 4 or 5 passes in those series. So it's not like a large sample size, but I think it is telling.
Yeah, great insight by you to share that Angeli completed his final 7 passes. I was not aware of that. I knew he closed much better than he started. I would note at the time that C.J. Carr helped Notre Dame's blue team offense down for Noah Burnett's 43-yard field goal after Burnett had just horrifically missed a 50-yard attempt. At that point in time, C.J. Carr was 5 for 5 for 62 yards, and the other 2 quarterbacks combined were 2 for 7 for 23 yards. And so C.J. Carr just started sensationally. He carried it over the balance of the day. And let's point out the fact that we heard Marcus Freeman say he'll have to see the film because maybe something was wrong with the route on C.J. Carr's interception. Maybe something wasn't quite precise there, or maybe Logan Saldate could have fought Minnick a little bit more to try and make that an incomplete pass instead of an interception, whatever. But let's transition from the quarterbacks into the offensive line, and we're not going to keep you here all night. It's Saturday evening and the Masters is on. But TP, I want your thoughts here. I thought it was really exciting today to see essentially Notre Dame's starting offensive line, or 5 guys that could start at any given time for Notre Dame when we talk about Anthony Knapp at left tackle, Billy Strouth at left guard, Sullivan Absher at center, and then Charles Jagasa at right guard, and Emil Wagner at right tackle. What did you see out of that opening 5 and that 5 that obviously performed the best over the balance of the day?
What I saw was physical maturity and the ability to move, generally move that opposing defensive line off the line of scrimmage. I was not expecting to see all of those guys. And when you see them, it's like, okay, well, maybe today's going to be a little bit different than we thought. And then it exceeded expectations. And again, you can look at Bryce Young was impressive. Cole Mullins did some things. Preston Zinner did some good things. Sean Sevillano was, I thought was really, really effective a good portion of the time. And so, I mean, it was great give and take, but man, to see that offensive line, and then, you know that Ashton Craig's out, and you hope that he comes back and is ready to roll full speed when they go to Miami, but you don't know that for sure. And you've got this big muchacho, to use a Charlie Weiss phrase from back in the day, in Sullivan Absher at center, and he's a little bit taller than what you normally are looking for in a center. I'm very interested. Everybody knows that we view this game from the ninth floor of Notre Dame Stadium, and you can you're trying to watch 10 guys at once, and so you miss a lot. I'm looking forward to watching the replay of the game to see how Absher did. But man, what a difference the offense is capable of making when you have that group, and then it gives those quarterbacks an opportunity to do more, and they shined in the process. So, yeah, really, really pleasant surprise. Good to know that Knapp and Schrouth are okay. They're healthy.
That's why we love you, TP, because you can go into the vault and pull out a big muchacho reference
right.
and have it work. As I shift to you, Drew, and I want to talk to you about the tight ends because you've had some good thoughts and insight there. I do want to note from a wide receiver standpoint today, just a solid day today for a number of guys. Cam Williams had a drop early, but he came back and made a really nice catch over the middle of the field. CJ Carr actually threw a little bit behind Cam, and he adjusted and caught it on his right hip, secured the catch, and turned upfield very briefly. And then Burris, as we noted, had the touchdown. Jerome Bettis Jr., a couple of really nice catches today. So we didn't learn a lot about the wide receivers. But, Drew, I want to flip it to you for the tight ends. We've already outlined that Jack Larson and Kevin Bauman both made big plays today, but Eli Raridan was hardly invisible.
Yeah, and quickly, I just want going back to you mentioned Sullivan Absher at center. We had a early enrollee at center, a freshman, a rising sophomore at center, and then Sullivan Absher is transitioning to center. And we didn't see, I don't think, any bad snaps in the Blue Gold game, which usually we see a bunch, especially for that. So I thought that was pretty impressive and kind of is why the game looked smoothly. But yeah, going back to the tight ends, I mean, I think it's really going back to also last Saturday where we saw they kind of use Eli Raridan in like an inside screen, and he turned it into like a 35, 40-yard gain. You saw some of that kind of slight breakaway speed, and especially when CJ Carr's in there and he kind of just gets the ball in the right place, you can see what makes him a little bit different and how he's starting to take advantage of that burst. And maybe he's not the zone beater or whatever that Mitchell Evans was, but there's some athleticism there that we're seeing Notre Dame start to take advantage of with him. And then you also saw, early on, two of those great catches and throws to Bauman and Larson that we talked about too. So I know TP during the week talked about the tight end being his main concern. And I think we at least saw some development there today that gives us reason to think that there's
I was particularly critical of Jack Larson. But, look, if let's say they do say that Marcus Freeman says, okay, we're going with the two young guys. There's a package. Like if CJ Carr's a starter, there's a package for Kenny Minchey in the red zone. There's no doubt about that. His ball fakes are absolutely tremendous. Maybe that probably wouldn't be satisfactory to Kenny Minchey, but it's a role on what should be another really, really good football team. I don't know. You start to think about a bunch of different things. I was on a pregame live TV shot, and I was asked, well, who do you think is going to win the job? Well, at that moment, Steve Angeli's still the most experienced of the quarterbacks. And so I said Steve Angeli, but you understand that Carr's upside is tremendously high and that Kenny Minchey is just really starting to feel it now. And then you add the performance on today. And so it's a good situation to have. There's going to be an odd man out, certainly. But man, CJ Carr and look, we've seen this over and over. There's something about the way the ball comes out of his hand and arrives at a receiver that's really special.
Yeah, I can't really say enough about how quick his release was today, how accurate he was, and how quickly he processed things in the full 11-on-11 environment. We touched on this on the Irish Illustrated Instant Analysis. He faced some middle blitzes, got rid of the ball very quickly. He faced some other he threw a backside screen that got executed very well. He threw a couple of swings executed very well. He hit Keedron Young on a wheel route with pressure where Keedron Young – and look, at Madden Faramo, it's not his fault. He's 3 months into his collegiate life. But Madden Faramo got abused on that play. Keaton Young, a huge gain on 3rd and short with a wheel route or a rail route down the left sideline. So I thought that those were all impressive things. Let's go ahead and start switching to the defensive side of the ball. And I'll again open with you, TP. Your general impressions on the defensive side of the ball, and specific, if you would, after that, give me your thoughts on Notre Dame's defensive line, particularly along the interior.
Well, I don't think Chris Ash is going to come away from today feeling he's got all the answers that he needs. But by the same token, and this was something we talked about pregame, I talked about on the TV. Well, no, I guess I got edited out. I didn't get a chance, but I was prepared to talk about how I think, and we've talked about this on our podcast, that interior defensive line is better than we anticipated, and it's deeper than we anticipated. Elijah Hughes had 5 tackles today. We mentioned Sevillano. Jared Dawson, we know he's a player. Gabe Rubio, we're anticipating him doing good things. So I think it starts there. We know about the linebacking core. I don't think we saw, a ton of Bowen and Snead per se. We saw them early. You guys correct me if I'm wrong there, but it's hard to watch. We can't watch all of it, and we're trying. But Luke Telich was outstanding, incredible in goal line, but he was good otherwise. He had 9 tackles, very active, love his length. I turned to Drew at one point and said, we have never seen Ben Minnick play football like that. We only get a handful of practices, so we've probably seen about 2 or 3% of what he's done on the practice field, but he was very active today, very confident, loved his body language. There's a lot going on there, man. Cole Mullins is doing things. Preston Zinner can't get on the field because the linebackers are so good. He had a sack, couple tackles. Did you notice that Armel Mukam was playing outside?
Yeah,
at defensive end, which was a little bit different and a little bit surprising too. But there are, my impression coming away from the spring, and I try not to exaggerate these things, but damn, there are a lot of good football players on both sides of the football. I am really encouraged going into the summer, our last viewing.
Yeah, and Drew, right quickly before I get to you, I want to follow up real quickly. Great question from Kevin Garrity, because it's a question I already wanted to ask TP, and another great comment from Regine as well, a regular. But Kevin Garrity wants to know, and I also was planning to ask this, TP, in your opinion, after watching today, and again, there are 3 more practices left. There's a spring transfer portal left. I can't stress that enough. But in your opinion, TP, the deepest and most talented Notre Dame team since when?
The Lou Holtz era.
Okay.
And again, I'm not saying that they're going to be that good, but if the question is deepest and most talented, JB, you should have seen some of those teams. I mean, there were 4th teamers that deserved to be on the field. Dr. Brian Radigan, the 6'4" linebacker from Iowa that came to Notre Dame, couldn't get on the field. Talk about another great linebacking core at Notre Dame. I mean, I don't want to exaggerate, and I'm not saying that they're going to, compete for national titles on a every year basis, but I mean, just pure depth. And man, does that speak to the development by Marcus Freeman and his coaching staff. And, so often we hear people criticize recruiting way more than they praise it. Look at this team. Look at this football team. And look at the 2 guys that they just added for the 2026 class in the last week.
Yeah, exactly. And they're not done adding for the 2026 class, and I would expect some more action there over the course of this month. I saw us have a recruiting question. I would note, TP, to your point, well, I saw those 1990 and 91 Notre Dame teams when they played Tennessee. Yeah. So I know well the talent and the number of pros on the field in those games. That's a great point. But when I look at the Notre Dame roster or look at their lineups out on the field, you can look at every position and say there are NFL players on Notre Dame's offensive line, future NFL players. Eli Raridan will absolutely play NFL tight end. And then you're encouraged by what's there at quarterback. They have NFL running backs. They have NFL defensive backs. They have NFL linebackers. There will be NFL defensive linemen or guys who get a chance in the NFL on the defensive line. So you really can look at all the position groups. And wide receiver, they don't have a first-round guy right now or a second-round guy, but they've got talent. They'll be better too. There was a question about wide receivers. Look, today was no Jordan Faison. Great House played early, not much after that. You're still talking about Malachi Fields arriving in June, on and on and on. Drew, I want to switch over back to defense and get your thoughts there. What stood out to you today, and specifically what you see in the secondary?
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm really intrigued by what they've shown in the secondary without a guy like Jalen Stroman there. Devonta Smith I don't think got a lot of action today. But you see the pieces behind those guys, and yeah, it's really encouraging. And there's a lot of different body types. I mean, you have a really athletic, quick, but still strong guy like Carson Hobbs out there making plays all over the field. Breaking, I think he had 2 or 3 pass breakups today. Going against first string, second string receivers as well. Had a huge hit on Keedron Young that. Took him off the ground. A guy who's 50 pounds more than him made a huge play there, and you saw Luke Talich going everywhere. I think, going back to kind of the depth part, it's also just there's different types of pieces too. It's not like, well, we have this guy who's slightly better than this guy, and they're kind of the same player. There's long guys, there's really quick guys. On the defensive line, you got kind of strong guys who are going to bull rush you versus, guys like Bryce Young and who's 6'7", 265 probably at this point. So there's just a lot of pieces that I assume will make it hard for offensive coordinators to prepare.
Hey, and we didn't see Traore, Botello, or Burnham today. Did Burnham play? I don't know that. And that's without Traore's your best pass rusher.
Yeah, a really good point. And I think Bryce Young is even 6'8" at this point, maybe 6'7", 6'8", 260. Great points there by you, Drew. We're closing in on 6 p.m. on Saturday, Masters Saturday. We're closing in on 30 minutes on this live stream. I want to open the floor back up to both of you guys, and Drew, we'll start with you because I want TP to go last. But Drew, let's start with you. Just your overall thoughts as Notre Dame wraps up spring camp. Maybe what you like the most, where you want to see Notre Dame, or where you think is most important for Notre Dame to make strides between now and the end of July when preseason 2025 camp opens up.
Yeah, I think even though the defense based on the score did not do well, today, I think we saw a lot of different pieces, and as you just said, TP, they're still missing a lot of guys out there too that they'll get back. So I think I'm just really encouraged by, despite losing guys like Xavier Watts, Riley Mills, Howard Cross, Ben Morrison, who still missed a lot last year, but still. Jordan Clark, who I think I had as a top 10 player for Notre Dame last year. Like
Leonard Moore, we didn't see.
Yeah,
him.
They just have all these guys, and I think they've kind of eased a lot of my concerns I had on replacing that talent and experience. Now they still have to prove it in a game, but I see the pieces are there. I'm still, we saw a lot from the quarterbacks. I'm really impressed by CJ Carr, but I'm still really curious on how that plays out. Do they tell a guy like maybe he should look elsewhere? Somebody's going to need a lot of reps because they're going to start their career, if it's Carr or Minchie, at Miami and against Texas A&M and South Bend. That is a pretty big trial you're going to put somebody through. So that's from this point going on, figuring out who that guy is and getting them ready is paramount.
Yeah, Noah Burnett. It was very troublesome seeing that 50-yard attempt. Was it tipped? I don't know.
He came back and hit a couple of field goals.
Yeah, no, he hit one. He hit one from 25, and he hit one from 43, and he hit his extra points, and so that was important. I'm not really sure. I have never ever come out of a blue gold game feeling this good about the Notre Dame football team because it's always so disjointed, and the growth of Marcus Freeman as a head coach and this staff in the last year is absolutely incredible. For them to have this kind of performance, and I love the fact that he came in and said, really pleased, because I was hoping that I wasn't exaggerating in my own mind, for the head coach to come in there and say there were great things on both sides of the football. I think Marcus Freeman has a future as an analyst. I think he was correct today.
Really, really good stuff, TP. A lot of positives to take from today. Quarterback, the big question. While Marcus Freeman said he doesn't think it's optimal to have a 3-man quarterback competition in the fall, he did say we have 3 quarterbacks we know we can go win a game with. That speaks volumes to the improvement in that room and the way that Notre Dame has approached recruiting and development. When we look at the Notre Dame defense, what Mike Mickens has done with the secondary, is ridiculous, and he's the longest tenured staff member. Marcus Freeman, Max Bola and company have upgraded the linebackers. But we're going to wrap it up right there for now on this edition of Irish Illustrated Overtime Live. I would like to note that while Tim O'Malley, to quote Seinfeld, or a great Seinfeld episode, is 30,000 feet above your heads, he will be back Monday for the podcast. That is the Irish Illustrated Insider Podcast. It will be a star-studded affair. So for the Dean, Tim Priester, for the Rising Star, Andrew Mintock, I'm John Bryce. This has been Irish Illustrated Overtime Live.